Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Victoria, and I'll be your host today. So, as National Nutrition Month comes to an end, we've invited two of our amazing registered dietitians to answer all your nutrition questions. So welcome, Lucette Talamas and Amy Kimberlane, who's also a certified diabetes instructor. So now that everyone's New Year fad diets are probably over, can you tell us the difference between diets like the keto diet and the word diet, how you as nutritionists refer to it?
Sure. Thanks for having us first. This is National Nutrition Month, and while it's a month to raise awareness and draw attention to nutrition, we think nutrition's throughout the whole year, but this is an exciting month for us just to really, truly get the message of nutrition across. And in regards to your question, the word diet over the years has kind of actually been misconstrued. The word diet alone simply means the food that you eat. And so over the years, it's kind of been connotated to weight loss and obviously different specific diets, whether it's in regards to an Atkins or intermittent fasting and all of those that we'll address today and talk a little bit about. But ultimately, it's the food that you're eating. And so I think it's kind of going back to what are you doing long term and what can you sustain and continue to do?
Yes. So to edify what Amy just said, we're all on a diet if we stop and realize it. So it's just paying attention to the quality of foods we eat every day. But we truly are all on a diet in the positive connotation. So culture has turned it into dieting, which is like a negative connotation, whether you're on or off a diet. But the truth is we're always on a diet.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, on that diet topic, we hear the word protein a lot, right? And you think of protein, eggs. So is there a limit to how many eggs we should be eating in a single day, even week?
Yeah, I think it's probably a really common question that we get when we do different presentations, Victoria. And I mean, not to not totally answer the question or evade it, we'll give a little bit of background and then explain, but it's really hard to kind of give just the set answer, you get this many eggs per day, and I'll explain. Just in the last week or so, a recent study came out, and that's where, nutrition is a science and it's ever evolving, and so it's not to confuse people, but you have to look a little closer at each of the studies and see what they're exactly saying and not be able to kind of misconstrue, and then obviously evaluate how the study was run. But eggs had come into the limelight in this last week to say that maybe caution into how many people are eating. And again, where in past years, the dietary guidelines had kind of given us the okay to maybe eat a few more. So for eggs, for when you look at cholesterol alone in a food that it contains, it doesn't actually raise the blood cholesterol levels, which is what sometimes is associated with it. It's more the saturated fat. So if we pay more attention to looking at different sources of saturated fat and think about what eggs are eaten with sometimes, typically. Yes. Butter, anything else? Cheese, eggs, again, obviously the eggs, but butter, cheese, bacon, all these things that are high in saturated fat. So unfortunately, it's not the egg that's necessarily raising a blood cholesterol, it's really a saturated fat, and taking a step back to see what ultimately is the cause for raising those blood cholesterol levels. So again, coming back to the original question, how many eggs can you eat in a day? For me, and what I always look at with people is really truly what are your other sources of animal protein throughout the day? And really taking it into context of the whole day and not just isolating one food like the egg. The egg is inherently lean and healthy. It's just, again, how are we pairing it and what are we eating it with throughout the whole day?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the concern about the egg study that just came out, there's always an egg study. So there's one to say it's good, one to say it's bad. It really relates to the individual person. So after, like Amy just said, after that person analyzes all of their sources of saturated fat that they typically eat, that person may realize, I need to cut back on some form of saturated fat. It may be through egg yolks particularly. They can eat the egg whites, it's pure protein, but they may choose to cut back on other sources of saturated fat, such as butter, bacon, and so on. The other concern about these studies is that if you just eliminate eggs, the question is, what are you gonna now eat? So people usually eat eggs for breakfast. Now, the substitution of eggs for a sugary cereal or a donut or a quick carb may actually be worse for your health. So these studies, they may be in the news, but it always comes down to, the sound nutrition that we're here to provide for you to think about your total saturated fat in the day. And if you are gonna cut back on eggs, make sure you replace it with a healthy food, a healthy whole grain or a lean protein, or even just cutting back on the yolks and including the egg whites.
I mean, along too what Lucette Jess saying, it really truly comes back to what are you eating it with as well, not just saying like what, again, you're substituting it, but I think sometimes people overeat protein in general, whether it's the egg or whether it's anything else, and it's because they're missing the vegetables. They're missing it with the whole grains. So can I now make like an omelet and throw in some spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes, right, along with the whole grain toast and spread some avocado on? We have a whole complete meal, but again, it's not as if it's overabundance of protein.
So that actually made me think, you talked about what do we eat eggs with, butter, etc. Is there like a best way to eat an egg? Is it hard boiled? Is it an omelet?
I think it's variety for me. I know that that's literally that phrase, variety is the spice of life. I would get bored just eating a hard-boiled egg every day. But again, it comes back to how can I pair it? How can I make it taste different? And I think omelets are great ways to throw in those non-starchy vegetables in the morning, which sometimes is a challenge for people. But again, I think it comes back to sometimes people will do more protein of an egg source because they're missing out on the carbs, right? Or they're missing out on the vegetables, and we just want it balanced, and that allows for more flexibility then.
Right. Okay. So if you keep in mind that egg is a source of protein, so the average person may need 1 to 2 eggs, in one sitting. Also, being able to identify a complex or whole grain carbohydrate, and to identify, starting your day with veggies, that's like dietitian bonus points. So the easiest way is to add spinach. You don't even have to wash the pre-washed one, and just it wilts in there with the eggs really quick. But you identify your protein and your carbs. If you can take it a next step, then you identify a veggie in your breakfast. But if you're in a rush, a good piece of whole grain toast and an egg is a nice combination that will keep you full until lunchtime.
So not fried.
Yeah.
Well, I think, the irony with that, Victoria, is it really comes back to people say fried, but are they really just sauteing, right? So then it's like a distinction of how you're really preparing it. If it's a nonstick spray or a nonstick pan.
Oh, and we are going to get to that later with the oils.
Yeah, but so again, it comes back to people say fried, but I don't know that it's necessarily fried. And again, it still comes back to, if they're throwing in olive oil and butter, then it's a different discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've hit proteins. Up next, your favorite, sugars. Let's talk about sugar. So at first we heard honey was the most healthy thing to use for sweetener. Then we heard the whole phase about agave syrup. What is the difference between added sugars and natural sugars?
Okay, so to start that one off,
It's
sugars.
complex. We'll break it down.
Yes, let's break it down. Sugars can be divided into 2 groups. We have natural sugar and added sugars. Now, what you're hearing about sugars everywhere is the added sugar. That's the one we should be concerned about. So we shouldn't be concerned about the natural sugars found in fruits. All fruits have natural sugars, and even some dairy, so milk and yogurt, have some natural sugars. Now again, you do not have to be concerned about the natural sugars because it's in controlled amounts in the natural state of the food. Now the added sugars, that's where it can be a little confusing because a natural sugar can be turned into an added sugar when it's extracted from its natural form. So I know it might be a little to digest, but we can use the honey example. Honey is, natural because we get it from nature, right? It's produced, but it's still a sugar. We can talk about refined white sugar, organic brown sugar. At the end of the day, sugar is sugar in your body. So whether it comes from something as natural as honey, or even from extracted from fruit, it's still considered at that point an added sugar. So we need to be watching how much added sugar is in our diet throughout the whole day. The less, the better for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think just to tap onto it, I think it's, what I've seen online and social media, it's, you'll see recipes written and they'll say refined sugar-free, almost as like this halo of this is healthier because you are using agave or maple syrup or honey. And like Lucette said, at the end of the day, your body doesn't distinguish between them. It's just sugar. And so for me, it's the quantity like she talked about and really trying to lessen the amount that we're taking in. Because again, if we look at a label, a tablespoon is a tablespoon is a tablespoon. And again, I have to know then how much someone's using to be able to lower and lessen that amount, regardless of what form, if you're thinking it's better because it's honey versus just the actual table sugar. And then just a little quick note about agave, I work with people with diabetes, and again, in theory, the claim is that it has a lower glycemic index, a large term, just meant to show how it responds in your body to that amount or that load of sugar. Unfortunately, everybody's unique. And so to make the blanket statement that this is going to be less of an effect in your body versus other people, you really truly have to test it out and see. And for me, the unbelievable thing is it's not even just the index, meaning how it gauges against sugar, it's the load. And see, again, it comes back to my original point, it's the portion. How much are people using, and then what do you pair it with? So it's a little bit more complicated than people make it out to be, but I would tell you still starting back to know how much you're taking in and then begin to reduce the amount, because I would say sugar's kind of hidden everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there, in general, a best option? I mean, is there something that, I mean, I know it's very individualized, but something that we can all use as our go-to source of sugar?
The best option is the one that you prefer, so it's your preference. The strong emphasis is the portion. So I think the most common question people will ask that for is, what can I add to, being in South Florida, what can I add to my coffee? I think that's usually what it relates to. So, and then it's how many cups of coffee do you have? How many spoons of sugar? How much creamer do you add? So that's usually one of the conversations we find ourselves having when it comes to added sugar. And some people start to realize it's 4 or 5 teaspoons that they add to a cup of coffee, or even to what we have, the smaller ones, the coladas, cortaditos, which are smaller, stronger coffees that have a lot of sugar sometimes. So any way that you can start cutting back on the added sugar, if you're at 4 teaspoons, start going down to 3 teaspoons. So it's taking a moment and seeing how many spoons am I actually putting in.
So how much is that? Can you see that?
But again, just going back to like guidelines, Victoria, so where we're talking about lessening the amount, you're really truly looking at, for females, it's 6 teaspoons a day of added sugar. 6 teaspoons. And again, that's equivalence of 2 tablespoons. If you look at it in that form, we don't think you're using that much, right? It's teaspoons, but men are 9 teaspoons. And so again, it comes back to, for me, I always tell people, find where you're eating and where are these added sugars coming from. Bread sometimes has it, even though as minimal as it could be. Spaghetti sauce has it. Your salad dressing has it. It's just in all these places lurking. And again, in the hopes in this next year with our new labels, they'll start to show the added sugar on the back. And I think that will be just a heightened way for people to now begin to identify where it's coming from, and then also begin to really know how much they're taking in, because right now it's mixed on the label with the total carbohydrate, and it's a little hard to read the label. So to answer your question, like Lucette said, it's really which one you prefer, but regardless, it's the portion, because again, the body doesn't distinguish between them.
And it's not just the spoons in the coffee, it's the spoons that were in the dessert you ate that you didn't even realize how many, if you didn't make the dessert. So in the cookie or whatever sweet you had in the day, it's all added sugars. Women 6 teaspoons per day, men 9 teaspoons from something that's in a baked good. If it's sweet, it's sweet. But the problem, there can also be trace amounts in some foods. But the main way to start reducing added sugar is through the beverages that you drink. So it could be the coffee with sugar. It can also be the sodas. Most people know soda is high in sugar. So in front of us, one typical 20-ounce soda has about 16 teaspoons of sugar. So we have this nice white pile that you may see on the camera is exactly 16 teaspoons of sugar. We measured it out. Now, a green juice, a store-bought green juice, which the first ingredient on the back is actually apple juice, not spinach juice. You may think it's spinach or kale. It's really just juice, these green juices that may have something green that makes it green, but has 17 teaspoons of sugar. Now, the trick is that it actually lists it at 0 grams of added sugar, which is it's a bit tricky because it comes from fruit. And as we mentioned in the beginning, fruit is considered natural sugar, because it came from fruit, but once it's extracted, as a dietitian, we see this as added sugar, because it's 70 grams of carb and sugar in one bottle that you are ingesting. So in your body, whether it's from a green juice, that's all juice, apple juice, or a soda, this is what's in your body at the end of the day. Wow. It's about 17 teaspoons and 16 teaspoons, almost the same amount.
Yeah, and again, I think one of their marketing techniques is, to show how much fruit went into it, right? But like Lucette said, the unfortunate is there's no buffer or barrier with fiber. And that's why we do encourage people to eat the fruit, the whole piece, right? To get that fiber content in order to really slow down digestion. And again, would you really eat that much fruit all at once? I don't know, or I don't think you would. But I think that's the context of what we try and show people. And again, the perception is that juice is something like a healthy thing at breakfast, and I'm not here to say that you can't have foods occasionally here and there, but I think it's in the context of overall, how much are people taking in and consuming? And again, for me, that's a health halo in the sense that people think it's fruit, and because it's juice, it should be healthy. And again, because like Lucette said, we now consider it to be added sugar, it's unfortunate. We would recommend to not have that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's-
that really perfectly leads me into my next question. So we're calling all social media influencers drinking celery juice. Does drinking a vegetable or fruit juice replace eating fruits and vegetables?
I think the easy answer is no. Yeah.
We think that, though.
So that's the second question that people may have.
Yeah.
Well, that they may be juicing only vegetables. So we know vegetables don't have this sugar, which is even if it's natural. But the vegetables, the benefit of them is also their fiber and the bulk of when you eat the vegetables. So while the juice is not harmful, it still doesn't replace eating your vegetables. So if juicing, it can get expensive when you start juicing a lot of veggies. I know that's usually a concern with eating more veggies.
Many veggies, this
Makes
much
that
juice.
Exactly. And again, it's mostly water with some vitamins, minerals that are, sure, they're good for you, but you can still get them when you eat them. Plus, when you eat them, you get this feeling of fullness. So it creates that bulk. Like you said, this much veggies, right? When you eat that with your carbs and your protein, it creates this feeling of fullness. So eating more non-starchy veggies is just a great recommendation. I think we're going to dive into a little bit of that later too. But so there's nothing harmful if you're juicing just vegetables, but the benefits of eating your vegetables is not obtained when you're juicing them, because when you eat them, you get that fiber. And fiber is very important for heart health, maintaining your weight, and also for your GI health, your stomach and your intestinal health.
So it's not necessarily bad for you, but it doesn't really do much than good.
I wouldn't say there's anything wrong if you want to drink celery juice by itself, right?
Okay.
Like Lucette was talking about in the thought of just non-starchy vegetables in a green drink like that. But again, I think if you're able to start including, I think it's like a starting point is what I tell people. If they're not eating any vegetables at all and they're going to juice some, it's a way for you to start to see it. We used to do it with my nephews where we would put spinach in something just so that they would be like, oh, it's green, but it doesn't really taste weird. Okay, I can do it.
Okay.
But I think it's like a stepping stone, right? And where you can move to the next step. And the problem, truthfully, is 9 times out of 10, they don't just have it as green. The trend right now is the celery juice, but again, some people are throwing in an apple to really kind of make it taste a little sweet, right? To offset the bitterness. And then just to distinguish between juicing and smoothies, again, the juicing really does extract all the fiber, and where the smoothies do have some of the fiber in it, just keep in mind there's 2 types of fiber, and within one, it's being obliterated, meaning it's not really doing its job. So, again, just going back to eating whole, fruits, vegetables, best ideal method, but again, really start to try and include some and not focus on the ones you don't like, but focus on the ones you do.
So when you're saying smoothies, you're thinking, because then people might say, okay, if I don't put my whole celery root through an extractor and I just put the whole vegetable into a bullet or whatever, is it still, the actual fiber is there, does it make a difference, or is it still not the same?
Again, just to go back to it, again, there's 2 types. And so again, yes, the fiber is in there. I can't negate that to you, or debate even, it is there. It's just not doing its full function.
Gotcha.
And again, it comes back to what else is in that smoothie? I did like a diet recall from somebody in one of our diabetes prevention programs the other day. And I mean, the total, and I'm not just focused on calories, Victoria, but we're giving that whole breakdown for people to see calories and carbs and protein, et cetera. The smoothie alone was 800 calories. It had 120 grams of carbs. Wow. And just to put that into perspective, that's almost the whole day's worth, or half a meal for somebody for calories, carbs the whole day. And again, I'm not here to talk numbers per se, but to really hone in on trying to encourage them to eat and really chew, because like Lucette said, it really then comes back to the message getting to the brain that with the chewing alone that they're full. It takes time, and when people are just slurping something down, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen.
All right, so thank you for that. Our next question is plant-based and vegan the same thing? And for those who may not even really know what they mean, can you tell us about them?
Yeah, sure. So it's a nice transition. We've been talking about vegetables, and now what does plant-based mean? Does plant-based mean that you're vegan? So that's a misconception. The term plant-based is really an umbrella term that's used to cover a spectrum of diets, and the ultimate end of one side of the spectrum is vegan, but the ultimate end of the other side of the spectrum can be minimal animal protein. So what we find in between is whatever works for that person. So we're here to encourage lifestyle changes. We're here to encourage more vegetables, especially non-starchy vegetables. So it doesn't mean you're a vegetarian if you're eating more vegetables. Sometimes that, it doesn't mean you have to call yourself a vegetarian if you have rice and beans for lunch one day, which is a completely vegan meal. You don't have to call yourself vegan. You don't have to stick to these labels. It's all about, when you're plant-based, is that you're choosing more veggies, specifically non-starchy veggies, every day.
Okay.
So, and if you start cutting back on the animal protein and adding more of the plant-based protein, so as you add, a little more beans to that rice, reduce the ratio. So we often see a lot of rice and like 5 little beans. If we start modifying that ratio and maybe it's half and half rice and beans, you can maybe cut back from your 8 ounces of chicken to maybe 3 ounces of chicken, because the beans, as you increase them in your meal, also has plant protein, which at the end you get the same amino acid or similar amino acids, which at the end it's all the same in your body from the beans or the plants and also the animal. It breaks down into similar amino acids. So that's the spectrum of a plant-based diet. It's something that is recommended for everyone because it's not a set diet. It's it's a way of eating that you find within that spectrum.
I mean, and just to tap on, I think it's just the bigger picture for everybody to really call attention back to protein, Victoria, like we were talking about earlier, and looking at the size. It's literally just a portion of the plate, and it's a side dish. It's not the main event. And that's what I always like for people to kind of like hone. Yeah, I mean, it's to hone in on and really where we divide a plate and give a perception of a quarter of the plate as protein, whether it's animal or whether it's a plant-based source, but it's the perspective, because we go into restaurants sometimes and that's our new norm of visualization of what it should be, and in theory it's not. So it's like, how do we help people to understand and see how much they should be eating? Half of the plate non-starchy, and in case people aren't aware of what those are, spinach, carrots, tomatoes, cucumbers, mushrooms, again, all the ones that aren't in theory like a load of carbohydrates, where on the other side, if it was a grain or a source of a starchy vegetable, it would be something like a sweet potato or a regular potato. All of those are different forms, but that's just a quarter of the plate. And again, it comes back to portions and allowing us to see, but protein is just a quarter of the plate, whether it's a plant source or animal source. So lowering the amount that we're taking in.
Okay, that's interesting. So this week, another study came out saying that kale is now the most pesticide-contaminated vegetable, right? So should that discourage us from buying vegetables?
So I think it was more of an article, and that article was by a group called the Environmental Working Group, EWG, and they're also the owners of the Dirty Dozen list. So I actually don't necessarily recommend that list based on, I'm not confident of the methods they use to make their list.
What is that list, the Dirty Dozen?
So they've identified the top vegetables according to their methods, the group's methods, of vegetables and fruits that they found to have pesticides or highest amounts. Right. Now, the flip side is our government, the USDA, has a pesticide data program that monitors, and according to those reports, 99% of our produce is below the recommended levels of pesticide. So, so we are safe to eat our fruits and our vegetables, whether they're organic or not. Now, the kale thing, the group also identifies any pesticide amount to be present, as they make it seem like it's a concern all of a sudden. Fruits and veggies may have residual pesticides. That's just how it is. That's why we recommend rinsing them. And it's not to send the message of you don't need to, if you can buy some organic, sure. But the most important message is that you need to eat your fruits and veggies every day.
Okay.
So the concern of articles trending like that, or even the list itself, like the Dirty Dozen list, is it instills food fears.
Right.
So if that person wants to eat something that's on the Dirty Dozen list, but they didn't find the organic version, or it was not too expensive, then there's a fear associated to eating, for example, non-organic kale. We shouldn't have a fear associated to eating non-organic kale.
We're not even eating enough fruits and vegetables as it is, and I think that that's what the unfortunate is when you see a list like that. It becomes overwhelming, or like she said, fear.
Scary, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, we need to wash our fruits and vegetables, and we do need to eat more. But yeah, it's...
And we need to ask who's making these lists.
Right.
That are all of a sudden trending. Who's behind these lists? Who's endorsing these lists? So again, as it's just recognizing that organic, if all our produce could be organic, like that'd be a dream. As a dietitian, you know, that would be a dream. But that's not how American agriculture is currently able to support produce. You know, we have conventional and we have organic. And the good part is that now we see organic more affordable, we see it more available. At the end of the day, whether it's organic or not organic, get those. We've talked about the non-starchy vegetables, the starchy vegetables, and your natural fruits. Get them in your diet.
We've got our own episode of Mythbusters going on here. I like this. So, next on Mythbusters, we see this term on social media all the time, at least I do, clean eating. So does that mean washing your vegetables? You know, what are these influencers talking about when they say they're eating clean?
I mean, I think the unfortunate is, you know, again, it comes back to, is food dirty? And yes, do I need to wash it before and not eat it off the floor? Haha, right? You know, is that what clean eating is? But it really, truly, I think, for me, when I explain to people, I don't love the term being used, but it's really looking at what people are eating and trying to improve how they're eating. And that's what we focus on, you know, in order to, again, come back to whole grains. Just as an example, can I have a whole grain versus a refined grain? And so is it something as simple as a white rice versus brown rice? Again, have they tried quinoa? Is that another grain that they could implement and use? For me, it's looking at what it is that they're eating overall and trying to improve in how they are eating. But again, I think when people use the term clean per se, it means that they're not eating things that might be fast food or, you know, I don't know, like it's complicated. No added sugar, you know, the sugar issue. And so it's like they're cutting
paleo, right? It's like
it's with any.
It's with any. I mean, I think it comes back to then the concept, and this is where it's leading to, unfortunately, is, you know, again, I don't associate food to be good or bad, but again, when you're saying you're eating clean, and then all of a sudden, let's say you have a dessert of some sort, and then now people say, oh, I'm cheating. You know, that's the connotation that we don't want, unfortunately. People can eat food, it can be in moderation and all of those things. It's just this lifestyle habit over time. How are people eating and including foods here and there? If they're doing the desserts every day and like tremendous amounts, that's obviously where we hone in on and talk to people, you know, what else might be going on. But the term clean versus dirty, you know, again, I think it just has an unfortunate connotation that we'd probably like to get rid of.
It's almost like clean is that new word for healthy. So people used to say maybe, or they still say, of course, I'm trying to eat healthier. Now we hear, you know, the new term is I'm trying to eat cleaner. And like Amy said, there's no definition for clean eating. And to be honest, there's no definition for healthy eating. Because even as a dietitian, when someone is excited to tell me about their lifestyle change, like, oh, I'm eating healthier now. As soon as I stop and I listen to what they're doing, you know, I realize it's relative to them. So I've heard people recall their diets of what they're, you know, as they're trying to be healthier, or they identify their diet as healthy. And there's definitely, you know, as a dietitian, I can think of areas for improvement. You know, but everyone has their own definition of healthy eating, and now the new word is clean eating. So if someone says that to me, it's just a moment to stop and say, okay, what are you trying to do? What is, you know, to open up the conversation, like Amy said, are you trying to cut back on sugars or processed foods? And all of these are really good things to start paying attention to. It's just, it may feed into the diet mentality of I'm trying to eat cleaner or healthier. Honestly, we should all be cutting back on added sugars. There's few things that we can say everyone should be doing, and you know, but some things that we can say everyone should be trying to do is cutting back on added sugars, cutting back on processed foods or fast foods. You don't have to be paleo, I know you threw that word in there a little bit, to cut back on processed foods. You can just be yourself and decide, hey, I'm gonna start to cut back on processed foods.
It makes it feel a little bit easier to, I don't even want to say eat healthy, but eat better, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Our last question before we get to the audience questions. I now have liters of coconut oil in my pantry that I'm now not supposed to use because all of a sudden coconut oil is not healthy anymore. What's your take on that, and what's the best oil that we should cook with?
Yeah, so you can use it for some sugar scrubs or your hair. And just to address the coconut, you know, again, I think it came into the limelight a little bit, you know, recently, and it's still around, like you said, but I think it comes back to the saturated fat and looking at the percentage and how much that it has. And again, even though it's a plant-based source, it's one of those tropical oils that really truly still has the properties of saturated fat that can stick. So, you know, again, where it was thought to be, again, healthier as a version, now we have to pay attention to what it ultimately can do inside of our bodies. So for me in oils, I always tell people it's rotation and for variety. You know, again, I always use my olive oil just as an example for salad dressing. So I don't typically use it when I'm cooking. It's just I don't know, maybe it's because I'm Italian, but it's one of those things that we just implemented where it's always salad dressing, and then we'll use something else if we're sauteing, or again, I don't typically deep fry, right? But it's like a version of what can I saute and put a little bit of oil in. I'll use something like a grapeseed oil. I'll use something like peanut oil even. And again, it just comes back to its properties and its attributes and what its better use is for. Just in the recent kind of, I would say in the last little bit too, it's surfaced to be popular, or some of the more specific ones like a walnut oil or an avocado oil. And again, I think it just really adds flavor. I think walnut oil is quite expensive, but again, if that's something that you have and you're able to utilize in your salad, and now you throw some walnuts on the salad, I mean, again, think of the heightened flavor that it provides.
So are these better than, or not better, but have less saturated fats than coconut oil? All of those, the walnut, the avocado oil?
Yeah, so they're
all have
plant-based
less.
sources, right?
Okay.
Those are all sources of mostly unsaturated oils. It's perfect. And Amy mentioned a keyword, variety. Variety is a good idea just in this general lifestyle. We'll use the word healthy as you're trying to be healthier and making these better decisions. Variety is a good keyword. So we're not just using, like brown rice is good for you, but does that mean you have to eat it every day?
You get bored.
Variety is good. So just like with your oils, keeping at least 2 different oils that you can rotate. One might be more of a cooking oil. One might be more of a, one's for your salads, or you can top off your veggies, or however it is you use it cold, is a good idea. And you'll notice, they're liquid at room temperature. So coconut oil tends to be a solid fat. And it's not to say there is a beneficial part of coconut oil. As I like to remind people, like there is a purpose why it got trendy, because there is a beneficial part of the coconut oil, but it still exists with a ton of the other non-beneficial saturated fats. So at the end of the day, American Heart Association and other major associations are not recommending for you to start buying the coconut oil. I recognize it is in some cultural eating, so when I speak to Caribbean populations, Jamaican populations, and the question there is, how's your cholesterol doing? So you may be genetically predisposed to more cholesterol issues, or maybe not. So if it's in your cultural, if you are Caribbean or Jamaican of descent and you do cook with it, and the coconut milk as well, it's about how your health is doing at that point to know if you need to modify your cultural recipes.
Okay.
But for the average person that doesn't have it at home, there's no need to go and buy it. And if you did go buy it, there's some other things you can do with it.
And just to finish up with that too, Victoria, I think that for me, I think back to when it kind of trended and stuff. I think it comes back into when people were talking about plant-based, but in the sense of the spectrum of really going more vegan. So no animal products whatsoever. I do a lot of baking, and I think that it's a great use as a substitute where butter may have been used, right? I just saw online the other day somebody making like a cinnamon roll using the coconut oil versus the butter, and
so
they turn
better than butter.
Well, again, not better, but again, like an equivalent in the baking sense. So if somebody is going with no animal products whatsoever, they can use those coconut oils in baking as a form versus like a butter, which is the animal product. So I think, again, I can't verify, but this is just my assessment. I think that's where it kind of started trending to get more popular, because it is used as like a substitute that's a plant-based source. And again, I think it just really still comes back to variety, because they can all work and fit and use in different forms.
Okay. And then one last thing that came to mind when you said that you don't saute or like cook
deep fry
or cook with olive oil with heat, that you use it for your salads. I actually heard recently that you're not supposed to like put olive oil on a pan and with chicken, let's say, and put it in the oven.
Okay.
Is that
so
a
when
thing?
it comes to oils, and especially the olive oil studies, there's some studies to prove almost anything. We talked about it with eggs, now with the olive oil. There's a study to show to cook with olive oil, and a study to show not to cook with it. So the truth is, every oil has a smoke point. This is another property of oils.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's happened to you, when you put some of the oil on a pan, you get a little distracted and you see it start to smoke. So some oils reach that smoke point faster than others. So olive oil, from the research I've done, you actually can cook with it if you're very mindful of not overheating it, because it is delicate. It has a lower smoking point than most other oils. Now, if it's extra virgin, it has the lowest smoking point of all the olive oils. Now, there's actually regular olive oil that's not extra virgin olive oil. You might think, why would I buy an olive oil that's not extra virgin? Well, it actually has a higher smoking point compared to the extra virgin one. So you can cook, with the regular olive oil.
What happens with does it
the smoke
burn?
point. So a chef will tell you definitely throw it away because it
start
changes the
over.
flavor.
Yeah.
And then scientifically, like you're killing off the vitamin E and the antioxidants that
Okay.
were alive, in there.
So we're killing the olive oil. If we reach its smoking
Yeah,
point.
please stop.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. So now to our audience questions. We've been asking, posting on our Instagram and on our Facebook throughout the week, asking you guys, what do you want to ask Amy and Lucette? So our first question, Jessica asked, do you believe in intermittent fasting?
So back to, I guess, the word diet, like our original first question, I think it comes back to the context of how people are eating and what can they do in a long-term stance. And so, we could have a whole show just on intermittent fasting as there's different.
I've heard it.
Again,
I
a whole
kind of
show,
don't really
Victoria.
know what it is.
But you're going literally for a period of time, and there's different methods to not be eating. So again, there's different ways. Are you fasting from 8 p.m. the morning before till noon the next day? And again, different terms to describe the amount of time that you're fasting. But again, I think it comes back to the context: is it really truly viable for you as a person to be able to go that long without eating? And again, then looking at the whole day's worth, are you then eating in that frame of time that they say is when you're able to eat? And are you now overeating, or are you really still getting the sufficient nutrients that you need? So, that's it in a quick nutshell. It's not, obviously, there's different studies that are linking it to many other different reasons why people are switching and trying it out and doing it. But I would say, again, it comes back to, is this sustainable for somebody, and are they able, because that's now their form of a diet per se, the food that they're eating. And again, are they getting enough? And then again, is it not leading to then maybe overeating because, during those times they're not eating, they're starving, right? So I think it just really kind of comes into play with, are they able to do it? And again, what are the reasons why someone might be doing it?
And it's that whole thing you guys talked about, right? You don't want to talk about a diet because it's not sustainable.
Right.
I couldn't imagine sustaining intermittent fasting my entire life.
So
I hope my family members are watching because they are trying that. But
and it's not intermittent fasting is actually not a diet where it's telling you what to eat or what not to eat. It's more about the timing.
Okay.
So it's playing with the timing, and that's another interesting part of nutrition is realizing the timing of our meals. Now, I like to bring it back to some basics of, fasting, right? Let's talk about that. There's actually a time when we all are fasting, and that's when we sleep. So at night, from the last time you ate, whether it was dinner or a late night snack, to the next thing you eat the next day. A lot of people skip breakfast. We talk about eating breakfast and the benefits, but we recognize a lot of people skip breakfast. So there's this fasting moment, right, that a lot of people already find themselves in. We also know there's some common trends. People are not sleeping enough every night. So sometimes, instead of going into these longer periods of intermittent fasting of it can be 12 to 14 or 16 hours of fasting, let's start with the basics. So it's are you getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep, as an adult? Because you're going to be fasting while you're sleeping.
right, and to that, if you're not getting good sleep, 2 weeks ago, we had a Facebook Live with a few of our physicians about sleep health. So if you're not sleeping and your nutrition is involved, go check out that segment on our Facebook page.
Perfect.
So we're ready for the next question?
Yes. Yeah.
So Rocio asked, is it okay to take Ensure Plus as breakfast and nothing at bedtime?
Okay, so to inform the viewers what Ensure Plus is, it's a supplement that comes in a bottle and it has calories, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. These dietary supplements, as we refer, usually dietitians, the time we come in to recommend them is later on in life, like an elderly person's life,
Okay.
where it's just more difficult to get nutrition into someone that may be going through a lot of medical issues and they're advanced aged. So that's a time when we medically see a purpose for supplements like Ensure Plus. So I don't know, obviously, the background of where the question is coming from.
Right.
But it did mention having it for breakfast. So it goes to the idea of, we were talking about smoothies and liquid nutrition. So while Ensure Plus is a balanced of supplements or meal replacement, we always want to encourage, if you're able to have food, to have food first.
Okay.
Now, recognizing if you're going to skip breakfast, I prefer you to have the Ensure Plus at that
Versus
point.
nothing. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it shouldn't be where you stop, right? So the next step would be, can I prepare something really quick? Can I grab a Greek yogurt add some fruit to it. You're not even cooking at that point. We talked about like eggs and toast, right? Whole grain toast. That requires time and cooking, but can I just grab a yogurt, and add some, almonds in there, add some, half a banana, you can make a really quick food assembly, not cooking, breakfast, instead of being dependent on like a supplement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think like she said, it just really stems from where the question was coming from, and it's hard for us to kind of gauge, but as Lucette said, again, food first and then the supplements if not, right?
And we recognize that there's a medical purpose,
Correct.
especially with advanced age and multiple medical conditions, where that might be a really important source of nutrition, something like Ensure Plus, for someone that's in a medically
Yeah, because the plus has
troubling
even
time.
more than the regular, so
Yes.
where they may be asking for that reason.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so that's fair. If you can eat food, eat it. If not, then that's a viable option.
Right.
Right? Okay, thank you. So, for the first time ever on Baptist Health Facebook Live, we have a Spanish question, and it is, Laura pregunta, tengo una hija de 19 años que le hallaron colesterol alto. ¿Qué le puede recomendar usted que tome en las mañanas para controlar el colesterol?
So to translate, she has a 19-year-old daughter. Do you want me to answer in Spanish?
Yeah, should we answer in Spanish, team?
I'll do English and in Spanish, but
Okay.
if she English. So here we go. If she has a daughter that is 19 years old and then has a high cholesterol level, they're asking what she could eat in English in English for breakfast. I'm like translating in my head. So I think it comes back to, Lucette just mentioned Greek yogurt with fruit. That could be a really great option. I always think of plant-based sources of protein, and where sometimes that might be hard to get in the morning. I don't know. For me, I always come back to nuts and nut butters. So anything like a peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, those are peanuts, just to show an alternative form. And so again, it might be not just the nut butter, but the actual nut. So, what I do sometimes is toast with peanut butter on top and a few pieces of fruit, right?
Okay.
Where I might then use something like a nut, where I would do oatmeal. So another really great whole grain source. So with cholesterol, that's what we're looking at. Can I have a few sources of plant-based protein versus the animal with that saturated fat? But then also, can I maybe increase my fiber amount, which is what also lowers the cholesterol, okay?
Okay.
So that was it in Spanish. Bueno, la cosa con el colesterol y la pregunta es de saber si qué puede comer en las mañanas. Lo que yo le recomiendo es de incluir proteína de la planta. Esto es muy importante, y por la mañana un ejemplo es una crema de cacahuate, mantequilla de maní, lo que sea la forma, si es entera en la actual cacahuate o la crema. Y si hay un pan tostado que se puede poner arriba, esto es un buen ejemplo que se puede incluir, pero la parte del colesterol es de saber dónde hay la proteína, si es de la planta, mejor opción por la mañana, en vez de los huevos que mencionaron antes, ¿verdad? Y también de ver la fibra, pues un buen ejemplo es avena. Y si se puede como incluir, porque esto hay fibra, y la fibra es lo que se ayuda para como disminuir, para que el colesterol no se pega en las arterias.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our next question, Marianne asked, can you suggest easy gluten-free meals for people with celiac while out and about?
That's a tough one. With celiac, what I would say to that is there are some restaurants actually now, I would say, that are really keyed in and honed in on making sure there are gluten-free options like rice, like quinoa, etc. But I think the thing with celiac, to be honest, is the contamination. And so you would want a restaurant to verify that they are not having other products that could have gluten, which is what they're not able to have within celiac disease, cross-contaminate the food that they would be eating. So I would tell you there's a couple different options here in Miami, again, and just opting to pay attention to, are they a restaurant or a cafeteria that really truly has it just gluten-free? Because I think they're popping up more and more.
It would require doing your research for sure, especially if you do have celiac disease, which is the true reason someone should be following a gluten-free diet. So that's why we're diving into that conversation and not saying, wait, why are you following a gluten-free? One of the main reasons to follow gluten-free is if you have celiac disease. So doing your research and finding the restaurants ahead of time. Locally at Baptist Health, we do have a celiac support group.
We do.
So if you want to know about local resources, I'd suggest to get in touch with our local support group that is actually hosted on Baptist Health campus. So you can connect with local people that are trying to find and live life the same way you are. You know, we want you to enjoy life and find those restaurants and places you can enjoy without being worried about gluten and your condition.
Very cool. I didn't even know that we had that.
Yes.
Yep. Lots of support groups, over 100.
Okay, so our last question of the day, Anna asked, do you guys have suggestions on hormonal eating for women over 50 years old?
So maybe what she might mean by hormonal eating is for women over 50, if we re-clarify what the question is saying, we know menopause starts, you know, anywhere in the 40s or obviously after 50. So we're going to assume that that's what she means. Post-menopause woman, what should I be eating? So a lot of women do tend to start paying attention to nutrition if they hadn't before, because they may start to notice their clothes fits differently with these hormonal changes. So this is where, you know, nutrition is so much more than just your weight and your appearance. It's what is happening on the inside of your body. So with these changes in hormones with menopause, your metabolism, which is not just about your weight, you know, everything's being affected on the inside. So first of all, working with your doctor, making sure that hormones are in check as far as like thyroid function, making sure there's not an in-depth hormonal issue going on, because then, you know, what we try to do nutritionally won't, you know, until you resolve the medical side or find out about the medical side through, you know, it's just through blood tests that your doctor, your PCP would help, you know, figure out what's going on. And then nutritionally, it really comes down to the same recommendations of eating more non-starchy vegetables, focusing on your whole grains, focusing on your lean proteins, metabolism, you know, you may not be as active at that point in life. You may not realize, you know, these things. So it's just, I think it's more of a emotional change that is, in the end, the same. You know, we still have to walk you through the same nutrition side and maybe more reinforcement, because there's just it is a big life change for some women.
So maybe come make an appointment,
Right?
Yeah.
Sure. No, I think it comes back to being individualized, but like Lucette said, I think it's really truly following up on their blood results and really getting that in check, because like she said, nothing works if that's not all lined up. And I think that's key and critical, where sometimes we miss the mark on that, you know, and again, the sound nutrition advice is overall eating and improving how we're eating all these healthy things we've been talking about today.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both so much for answering all mine and the audience's questions. Do you have any last thoughts you want to leave us with for today?
Well, thanks for having us. It's been a great time to be able to bust some nutrition myths and also just help put some nutrition information out there. You can stay connected with us through a lot of Baptist Health offerings in the community. So you can, you know, it doesn't have to stop here. So you can attend some of our nutrition classes. You can make an appointment with a dietitian one-on-one. You can follow us on the Baptist Instagram for some of our dietitian created recipes under the hashtag Baptist Healthy. So there's a lot. It's all about a journey and finding that healthy lifestyle. And we invite you to stay in touch with us here at Baptist Health on your journey.
Yeah, and it, you know, just to tap onto that, you know, I think it really truly comes back to what we started off in talking about. National Nutrition Month is March, but it really truly is throughout the year. And I think we get excited about it because it heightens the awareness, but really truly it's a reflection time to say, where can I improve and how can I really truly feel better, right? Not just by, you know, improving what I'm eating, but really taking the full picture and saying, what can I work on to really truly sustain these things for a lifetime, like we said. And, you know, overall, food is social as well, and I think it turns into something fun where now I can really truly create new fun foods that I'm eating, and now it's like working in with everybody. I mentioned the diabetes prevention program we're working on. You know, I think I see it in some of those patients, and again, that's my encouragement for everyone. Small changes that lead to big results. So thanks for having us today.
Thank you, and thank you guys for watching. Until next time.
Bye.